welcome yet again to another video of Squivosphere. And today is a toughie. We are talking about in Supernatural's last ever episode. It was a hard one to watch. If you're wondering what it is I'm wearing, I've actually got a Supernatural jersey that I brought from a Comic Con a few years back. I'll just show you that now. Hopefully you can see it. There it is. Got Winchester Bros on it. But I figured it'd be fitting to wear this while doing my review today. So, okay, let's talk about the episode for starters. It starts off with, going through the motions. Sam and Dean, they kept the dog, which was interesting enough. And, Sam and Dean just going through the motions of their usual daily ins and outs, really, to be fair. It does feel like they were going for, are they really hunting anymore? That's the feeling you get when the episode starts. Then, of course, they're there, they get their laptops out. Dean's already there with his laptop and his dog and his beer. Sam comes out with his laptop and it's just like, you got anything? And then Dean's like, yeah, I got something. And it's like, you're thinking, oh, okay, so they are still hunting. So anyway, the episode, does the supernatural sort of thing. And then we get, we find out what it is that Dean's got. Pie. Gotta get me some pie. Some frickin' pie. It's a nice little callback to obviously Dean's fascination with pie. And it's good. It's fun. It's a fun scene. You get Sam, who's sort of in the dumps, down in the dumps a little bit, thinking about Cass and Jack. And then of course, like Dean's like, come on, Sam. We're still alive. We're still here. Let's do this. Get some pie. Get in on this. And then Sam, shoves a pie in Dean's face, and it's a wicked callback to the pranks that they used to do. And it's like, Sam's like, yeah, I've wanted to do that for so long, I am better now, it makes me feel better. And what's quite funny is that Robert Singer is actually in the background of this scene. He's the guy in the white shirt that laughs at Dean getting pied in the face, which is pretty hilarious, I ain't gonna lie. So yeah, we're sort of into a very mellow episode for the last episode of the series, Usually last episodes of the series are always like quite action-packed, quite heavy on the content. But in this, it sort of takes a step back to what we have been used to for almost 15 years, which is the Sam and Dean being brothers, and it's about them. It's not about anyone else. It's not about anything else. It's about Sam and Dean being brothers, and that is something that I think a lot of people can't take that away when they watch this episode. They watch this episode and they think it's terrible, but they don't get that what they have done is brought it back to what the first series was, what the first episode felt like. They definitely brought that back. Anyway, we get on to find out that there actually is a hunt, with the guys in the clown masks type things, and it's quite fun to watch, like how the brothers deal with it. It's very classic in there. The badges come out, and it's a nice little call to Kripke and Singer in this scene where they get their badges out, and it's just reminiscent of what we used to have back in the old days. They recognise what the kids like, what someone's drawn, a witness, and they go to Dad's journal, which is again a nice little callback. Going back to that journal, so fun to watch. It just feels really, as I say, it's reminiscent of what we used to have before the Angels came along. Don't get me wrong, because season 4 is my all-time favourite season. very close with this season, but you know, when it was back, when you know Sam and Dean hunting the family business, that's when it was the best. And that is best, to be fair. So moving on, you know, as I say, Sam and Dean are at the car. They're looking for Dad's journal, and this is where we get a nice little call, nice little call back to, you know, there was an episode where they found something and it was a new monster, and Dean got the chance to call it something. It was Starships, Jefferson Starships, and you know that, and we get a little call back to that in a sense, when you know they're talking about the tongues being ripped out of the children, and Dean's like, they're minds, evil minds, and then Sam's like, oh, just vampires, vampires, you know. It is classic Dean, and it's classic Sam trying to like sort of put this realism on this, and then Dean has to put this spin of, you know, hilarity onto it. Again, it was a nice callback to what they used to do and something they haven't done in a very long time. And then we obviously move on to the actual fights. You know, I mean, obviously we get a few scenes in between that where like they discover one of the vampires, and it is a vampire. It's not a vampire mime or a mime, but it's still evil, as Dean says. So yeah, we get that, and they find out where the kids are being held, and then we get what is a fight, which is interesting. Excuse me if I start to sort of mellow out with this video. It's very hard to do because this episode was anyway, so we get the fight with the 4 vampires that we see. There are actually only 4 at first, but as you start killing them, they seem to regrow. It's like something like that. Anyway, at one point, you know, Sammy's knocked out by the big one, which is the worst of them all, and we'll say why in a minute. And while Dean is being held down, you know, somebody comes along and it's like, you know, for that moment when I'm watching that scene, I was like, oh my god, who is this? We get a returning character all of a sudden for the last episode. And it was a returning character, but not one that you're going to remember instantly until they showed you the little flashback. And it's Jenny. She was one of the victims in season 1, episode 4, the very first vampire episode. And, you know, she was turned into a vampire. Something that I guess the brothers didn't know. So it feels like, you know, this is sort of the same nest to a certain extent because of her. But done very differently 15 years later. So that was really weird to see that come about. But anyway, Sam wakes up, chops her head off. She's not there for long. She has a few lines. That's about it. And then the fight continues, and you know we start to see, like, you know, Sam's obviously a badass as always. So is Dean. Dean's always been a badass, you know. But of course, the big ass vampire pushes Dean onto a rebar. Now this is the last vampire. Sam chops off the last head of the one that he was dealing with. Then he chops off the big guy's head. But obviously, in this moment, Dean is stuck there. He can't move. If he moves, he's instantly gone. Obviously, we know that as fans because we know what's just happened. And yeah, the rebar goes right through Dean's back. Now, this is where I think people start having issues with this episode, because in the past they've always just dealt with it and it's all been fine. But for this instance, it needs to be noted that there is no God anymore. There's no angels. There's no one helping the brothers anymore. It's just the brothers. And that's how good the writers are. They brought it back to what it used to be, which is, you know, something that... I'm just going to move my camera over a little bit. You know, they brought the episode back to what it used to be. You know, the brothers on their own, you know, and these things happen. Accidents happen in real life, but it's not just the real life thing, because accidents happen to any hunter. This is the way a hunter can go, and this is the way a hunter does go sometimes. And that's the point they were trying to make. But people didn't see it that way. People are seeing it as if, they're getting rid of Dean really quickly just to get the story going again. And they're wrong. They are wrong. In this, a lot of the time, I do say that it's people's opinions. And yes, it's people's opinions on what they thought of the episode overall. But when it comes to this scene and this moment, you're wrong, okay? I'm sorry to say it, but you are. Like, for me, Dean's death is one of the most heartfelt. A lot of people would say, like, oh, they're doing it again. There's no feeling it this time because he's dying again. But no, it is the very end, and that is why it's so important of the death. I cried like a nutter through this scene. Dean saying goodbye to Sam and telling Sam, you need to let me go. Say it's okay. And then obviously Sam is crying his eyes out. I'm crying my eyes out. Dean's got a tear down his eyes. And it is a very hard moment to watch. I've watched it 3 times pretty much now. If I include all the times I've watched clips on YouTube of people talking about it and stuff like that. Because I'm always interested to see what people think of it. Well, that's what I did. I watched other people's reactions, so I watched it 3 times. And watching Dean die like that was so hard. And as I say, Sam turns to him and he's like, yeah, it's okay, Dean, it's okay. You can go now. And then Dean goes. Yeah, I know. I'm getting pretty emotional. I was just talking about it. So then, so Dean dies, and he's, Sam's sort of contemplating on whether or not to actually burn the body later on in the next day, like, sort of thing. And Dean's body's wrapped up, and it's like, if Sam does this, that's it. There's no returning as a ghost. There's nothing. There's nothing else for Dean. And then he flicks, and he picks, and it goes, and he burns. Dean burns, and that's it. Then we move on to, like, Sam dealing with it, and how, he goes into Dean's bedroom. And there's this moment in Dean's bedroom where there's a thing on the mantelpiece, like there's a thing on the desk, some paperwork. Now, people are saying it's his will. I've also heard people saying that apparently that they've been able to zoom in on it and see a decent amount of it, and it was actually a application form for jobs. That Dean was looking into jobs, because obviously the whole thing was that now that Chuck has ended this whole storyline thing, they can do whatever they want. And that's what makes me think that Sam and Dean really were thinking about just getting a normal life, having families, living the way that, life is probably intended to, misses, babies, that kind of thing. Other people are saying it's just the deed to the car, baby, which would make sense on a Dean scent, but I like the idea that it's the job one. The idea that they're moving on and gonna live a normal life, and they're just sort of wrapping up any hunts in the area, like maybe just locally. But then we get a phone call. Sam's in Dean's room and he's really broken up, crying his eyes out again. And then we get a phone call, somebody asking for Agent Bon Jovi. Again, another call back to a previous episode and a previous thing, and it's Dean's other phone. Dean's other cell. You know what to do. It's that phone, which is kind of weird and fun at the same time. So yeah. So we get the phone call. Sam's leaving the place, and he's got a bag, and it's clearly the last time that we see it's the last time we see the bunker. Whether it's the last time Sam sees the bunker, I'm not quite 100% sure, but the way it's filmed, it's very much like that. But it just doesn't look like Sam's got enough bags to actually leave the place. I mean, would he really leave Dean's room as it is? We know he takes the car, so we've got to assume he takes everything else with him. Anyway, the scene moves on. Sam leaves, and then it cuts back to Dean being burned. Dean, Dean's funeral, shall we say, the Hunter funeral. And then we're in heaven, and Dean's there, and he's like, "Oh, okay, look at me. I'm okay." And then we come across Bobby, and of course it's our Bobby. It's the original Bobby again. I started going again because it's the original Bobby. The conversation obviously confirms it's the original Bobby, with the whole revelation of like what happened the last time we saw Bobby, our Bobby in heaven. That he was in Evan's cell for breaking out of heaven to help the boys with something. That was obviously key to that particular season. So it's nice to get a call back to a past season in a very small way. And they have this conversation about how Evan's changed. Cassie's there, Jack's there. We don't see any other character than Bobby, which is a shame because now they intended to do a very different season end with a lot of people coming back. But in the end, they couldn't do that thanks to COVID. But what we got is still very good. So, Bobby and Dean have a conversation. They talk about obviously Jack and Cass rebuilt the place. It's no longer reliving your best memories. It's just living, just one big space. And obviously, there's a mention of his mum and dad having a plot over the way, like sort of thing, and it's like, oh, in that moment, if they had just made this like an hour longer and were able to have the cast come back, Dean could literally go and visit everybody while Sam's having his normal life, and just cut back and forth with that "Carry On My Wayward Song." It's just, it's sad that we didn't get that, but what we did get is still brilliant. So anyway, Bobby asks Dean what he wants, and there's the car. And Dean gets in the car and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna ride." So Dean is obviously driving to find Sam because Bobby has told Dean that time works very differently in heaven, which means that you can die and you'll be in heaven, and then say you're waiting for somebody, they'll be there quite soon after, because time works differently. But while time is working differently for Dean on Earth, for Sam it's running normal. And I was expecting to see Sam hunting, like similar to the mystery spot when Dean dies and he keeps dying, and then at the end of that, obviously Dean does die, and then Sam has to carry on. And I was expecting that, and then it just showing Sam's last hunt and him dying, and and I thought, but then how would it work? Because it wouldn't be as powerful as Dean's, because there's no one there to say goodbye to him. There's no one there to say, "Yeah, just go." You know what I mean? But instead we got what Sam always wanted. Sam got what he always wanted, and that was a family. We see that he's got a child, called him Dean. And he had everything he ever wanted. He was playing chucking ball with him, that kind of thing. And it just is. It's a powerful moment. It's powerful, and then obviously we get Sam's death. Oh my god! And what does Dean say to him? And when I say Dean, I mean his son Dean, who has got the mark. Has got the supernatural sigil. The ones that the boys have. The tattoo. He's got that on his arm now. A lot of people might be interpreting that as he's brought him into the life, but other people will also interpret as it could be just that he's honouring his dad by having the same tattoo, and Sam's protecting his son at the same time. You know what I mean? That's all it is, and I think that is all that it will ever be. So yeah. One of the most heartfelt things, and I noticed it during the episode, is that that the Dean, Sam's son Dean, actually says to Sam what Sam had said to Dean when Dean died. You know, Dad, it's okay, you can go now. And I think Sam noticed that, and Sam realised that, and at that moment he realised that he was going to see Dean again. And it's so sad to watch, as they're both are gone now. There's now Sam and Dean on Earth, to a certain extent. It was a hard episode to watch, and something that, it was brilliantly written. Of course, that's not the end. We go back to Dean, and he's pulling up on a bridge. And something that was pointed out that in season 5, episode 2, it's the same bridge. Apparently, obviously the brothers started on a bridge as well. Another thing to point out about this is that Dean is actually wearing something very similar to what he wore when he first went to go and pick up Sam, and vice versa. Sam is wearing the same thing when Sam appears. The blue top, the grey hoodie, that shitty hoodie that he had, that I'm so glad they got rid of eventually, and that brown, coat. But this is where we actually get the definitive end. Dean knows that Sam's there without even looking, and he's like, "Hey, Sammy, Dean," and it's like, "Oh God!" It's like, yeah, I know that we only had like 20 minutes ago was the last time we actually saw them together, but knowing that Sam hasn't seen him for years, it's even more heartbreaking. And then they end looking out on the bridge. Camera zooms out, and that's it. Obviously, after the first initial credit comes up, for the last episode, then we go back to Sam and Dean, but it's not Sam and Dean, it's Jensen and Jared talking to the camera, saying thank you for all the 15 years of the support, and we'll never forget you, and everything like that. And then they sort of walk out of camera, but then all of a sudden it's like the camera's gone that they've just walked out of, and it's everybody, the crew and Bobby, Jim Beaver, they're all there, and it's all like saying bye, and they're waving, and then you hear Dean's voice saying, and cut. And that was the last episode of Supernatural. It was this was a video that, I really considered just talking about what I liked about the video, what I liked about the episode, what I didn't like about the episode, and then I thought to myself, why not do a little bit of both? Give an explanation for the episode, give as much detail as I could that I saw, and then talk about what I liked and disliked. There's not a single thing in this episode I disliked. They brought back, the original Bobby, which was nice. It was an alternate universe Bobby. Yes, we didn't get everybody back that we wanted to, like Charlie, Rowena, Cass, Jack, Mary, John. We could have had all these characters come back. Kevin, just for a split second. Of course, they couldn't do that because of COVID. But that is not to say this episode is bad. This is a brilliant season finale, and I'm going to put it out there now. This is the best season finale that there ever has been of a TV show. Because, yes, while it may sort of back off from what has been built up a little bit, only a tiny little bit, of how the characters have changed over the years, but Sam has always wanted the family dynamic, and that's what he got. Dean always knew that he was going to go out on a fight. Probably not that way, probably not that day. But Dean always knew that, and that's what Dean got. That's what people need to understand. Dean got what he wanted, Sam got what he wanted. End of. Dean never had that family dynamic. He was going around sleeping with women every other episode, Do you really think someone like that settles down eventually? Probably not. I'm not saying they don't, but it's very rare. 95% of the time they don't settle down. But this has been the best journey ever. I cried like a baby for this episode. As I say, I watched it 3 times, including my YouTube videos that I've watched. and I cried every single time. You know, I watched it on my own on the night it aired, and then I watched it with my dad a couple of days later, and still cried. You know, my dad texted me, "Kate, me for crying at things that are TV shows and films because I'm quite emotional when it comes down to it." But this was an absolutely beautiful episode. Yeah. You know, don't know if I want to talk about it anymore. Sam and Dean are gone, and it's the end of Supernatural. We'll never see it again. You know, I'm so glad and I'm so happy, and I want to thank Sam and Dean, like Jensen and Jared and Misha, Alex, you know, Jeffrey, Samantha, you know, all these cast members, Felicia, Jim, everyone that we've ever had on the show. I want to say thank you. I know you won't be watching this, but I just want to say thank you to every single cast member of this show. You have given me what I needed through my life. I was 12 at the time when this show started. I'm now 27. And this show has given me everything I could ever want in a TV show. And I've laughed, I've cried, I have, you know, screamed at the telly. Not because of something I don't like, but because of what the show does and how it makes you feel. I've got angry at Lucifer, I've got angry at Cass at times, I've got angry at Dean. You know, at the start of season 15 when he said that he was the reason why Mary died. You know? I've been mad at every single character in this show at some point or another. But the show itself deserves what it's got. I will never, ever not love Supernatural. So, to Jensen, to Jared, to John, to Sam, you know, I just used John, I'll just use Jeffrey's name anyway. Thank you all for what you have done, and I look forward to seeing you in your future endeavours and projects. Thank you so much. Thank you as well. This is me now, back to talking to you, the audience. Thank you for watching. This is obviously going to be my last episode review, particular episode reviews. But down the line, I may do like top 10 top 10 episodes. You know, the least 10 episodes, whatever. Like, you know, top 10 worst episodes maybe. Supernatural. My Supernatural content is not ending here. But this has obviously been a hard video to do. Thanks for watching. This episode gets a thumbs up from me, gets an absolute 10 out of 10. And yeah, it is my opinion, but in this instance, I do not care what you think. This episode is perfect. So, thanks for watching. I've been Scrivo. This has been Scrivosphere. And I will see you all next time. Goodbye.